Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics, and this is the CZ USA Bren 2 MS in 7.62x39. The holy grail for some people is a rifle chambered in 7.62x39 that isn't com block or AK or AKM or AK-ish in design. There's Galils, and of course there's AKs, and there's other rifles out there that chamber 7.62x39, including the often problematic AR platform chambered in 7.62x39. But ground-up guns are few and far between when compared to other calibers. The Bren 2 MS, I did a review on their 5.56 variant, and this one is chambered in 7.62x39. It's virtually the same gun that I already reviewed, so there's some features that I don't really have to spend as much time going into detail on, because I pretty much already covered those features, but I will cover how they behave when the gun is chambered in 7.62x39, because as you'll see, the gun does behave differently in a number of ways because of, well, the 7.62x39 round. Now for this review process, one thing I did that is a little bit of a departure from what I usually do when I review a firearm, I immediately replaced the rail before I even started the review process. I had the rail, the OEM rail, the 922R compliance rail when I SBR'd that one. When I SBR'd this one, same parts came in, but I did not want to use that really short rail, so I went ahead and replaced it with the HBI Industries rail, which I already replaced on my other Bren 2 MS and 5.56, because I wanted more rail space, more options, more real estate for more fun. That's the only thing as far as OEM parts that I did change out for the review process. So if you want to think about it, this is kind of also a look at the HBI rail as well. As far as features go on the Bren 2 MS and 7.62x39, it's just like the Bren 2 MS, well, very similar to the Bren 2 MS and 5.56. It was designed from the ground up, which is a departure from the 805 Bren, which was built specifically for a military contract. This was built for the general public. One thing that definitely appeals to me about the firearm, it's an 11-inch barrel, but it's cold hammer forged, which I do like. It's actually 11.14 inches. Overall weight, OEM, is just over 5 pounds. And you have ambi controls. You got an ambi safety selector, and you have, if you want to use it, an ambi bolt hold and an ambi bolt catch, which is inside the trigger guard. Talked about in the previous video. I don't really care for that. Left side charging handle, which acts as a forward assist, and it can be fired with the stock folded OEM. It comes with 2 magazines and their sights, which I actually like. You got a day and a night, and then of course an HK style flip up front and rear. Of course, from the manufacturer, you are going to have a reduced rail length. It gives you a reduced sight radius. That may be something people are worried about. Me personally, I don't really care, because I'm going to put a red dot on it, and backup sights become backup sights. You are limited with accessories with the OEM rail, which is why for this particular one, just because I already took a look at the 5.56, when I was doing the 7.62x39, I went ahead and replaced that rail with HB Industries. As far as the rail's performance throughout the 2,000 round review process, went great. A rail doesn't have to do a whole lot, but it does have to be able to provide a consistent seating surface for your accessories, as well as hand placement for whatever shooting position you happen to be in. I didn't beat on the rail specifically a whole lot, such as doing drop testing or anything like that, because the video wasn't specifically about that, but it did take the general abuse of hard use over 2,000 rounds, and I try to do those 2,000 rounds as quickly as I can, usually 1 to 2 range trips, sometimes 3, just to keep the frequency up and run the gun hard. I initially clean and oil it and then run it. One of the concerns that I did have with this review is, because I'm going with an aftermarket rail system, I have to use their receiver extension to reach the gas adjustment. And I didn't know if over the course of 2,000 rounds I was going to have anything come loose or have any issues with that gas adjustment extension. Because all it really is a wrench that goes in there. It's not like it's replacing the whole gas adjuster. The OEM gas adjustment is still in there, and then the rail has a second interface that interfaces with it, almost like grabs it and adjusts it, which is probably the most cheap and efficient way to design it. But I did have some concerns, not really too bad, that might cause some issues throughout the review process, but I'm happy to report that it did not. I used the OEM sights, ScalarWorks mount, and the Trijicon optic, and I went with a Mod Light because anytime I get an opportunity, or purposely do it on purpose, to shoot in low light, that's exactly what I would want to do. And anytime I do a firearm review, I like to shoot under low light anyway, just to see how it behaves. Now, just like the Bren 2 MS in 5.56, there's a lot of interesting and nice features. You've got ambi controls as far as your ambi selector, which is a short throw selector, and you've got an ambi bolt hold and release, which I talked about in that video, is inside the trigger guard, which I do find problematic. Some people think, well, you know, you can put it on safe in any condition, so it's no big deal. I still don't like sticking my finger in there unless I'm going to be pulling the trigger, so that's not a feature I'm necessarily going to use. As far as the bolt hold and bolt release goes, outside of that, it's on the outside of the gun in a traditional ping pong paddle, if you will, placement. And I've got a left side charging handle, which also acts as a forward assist for some people who want a forward assist. Folding stock, I went with the OEM stock just because I like it. Using it on the 5.56 version, carrying over to the 7.62x39, I wanted to use that same stock instead of going with like a Dan Haga mount and use like an ACR stock or something like that. And I'm a big fan of the grip surface. Now, as far as magazines go for the Bren, this is where you run into problems. You've got two magazine styles out there, the OEM one that comes with it, and the OEM one that you can sometimes find in stock. One's translucent and one isn't. They're both really good magazines, as I found throughout the 2,000 round review process, but they're very hard to find for some reason. I've heard a couple conflicting explanations for why that is. But once I was able to get enough magazines, I began the review process. And of course, the first thing I'm going to do is that 500 round burn down, which is 500 rounds as quickly as I can get them through the gun, to see if that accelerated rate of fire would cause issues that you wouldn't notice otherwise shooting the same amount of ammo in a longer period of time. So here's your burn down. You will notice occasionally during this cycle of fire that there's some excess flame traveling up the rail surface. There's a lot of excess gas coming out of that relief hole in the gas piston system. And this is a piston gun, so relief holes are a thing to bleed off that excess gas. There are gas adjustment settings. There is technically no suppressor setting. And that's something that I kind of glossed over when I talked about the 5.56. You can adjust the gas for the type of suppressor you're using, but they do not call it an actual suppressor setting. They have normal and adverse. That's problematic. With the 5.56, it was a little spicy when you shot it unsuppressed, depending on which gas setting you're on. With this particular gun, I used two different suppressors during the review process. I used an OSS 30 cal TI, and I also used a Dead Air Sandman. Changed out the muzzle devices on those to switch out the suppressors to see if there was any kind of different behavior, because those cans do perform dramatically differently based on how they're designed. One is a flow-through technology, and the other one is traditional baffle design. Both great cans. This thing shoots mad hot, hellacious fireballs when suppressed, regardless of the suppressor you're using, out from underneath the rail, which can be a little disconcerting, which is I guess a more reasonable way to say it's a little bit scary when it happens the first time, because you're like, did I just blow the gun up? I've had, you know, guns that bled off a little bit of fiery puff out of a relief hole, especially with piston guns, but this thing is angry when you suppress it. Recoil Pulse doesn't necessarily change very much, which I found a little bit surprising, going from one can to the other can to unsuppressed. Of course, muzzle device unsuppressed factors into it a lot. But when you shoot it suppressed, it's just telling you the whole time, take this suppressor off of me, take this suppressor off of me. And I was always concerned that there was going to be some kind of catastrophic failure when shooting it suppressed. There wasn't, luckily. But just because, well, I don't like being told what to do, I also used this for a 500 round burn down on a suppressor review. And it worked, but I ended up sending some arm hair and turning my hand black when I wasn't wearing a glove. And it just continues to tell me, take the suppressor off of me, and not in so many words. Functionally, it ran fine suppressed, but it is noticeably angry when you do put a suppressor on it, as you have seen in the videos I've shown you so far. Accuracy. One of the biggest elephants in the room when it comes to the 7.62x39 round is some people believe it's an inherently accurate round or an inherently accurate firearm. Both are true depending on what ammunition you're shooting. And unfortunately, in the 7.62 by 39 round, you don't have the large variety of really high quality, even match grade ammunition to shoot. I zeroed it on a Hornady ammunition, and that's what I used for actually checking the accuracy of the gun. Now here's a 5-shot group that I fired at the zero distance of 50 yards. Because I'm not using a magnified optic, I just went ahead and did groups at 50 yards. For the round and the barrel length, I am happy with that accuracy. I did stretch it out much further than that during the review process, just shooting on steel anywhere from 25, 50 out to 250 yards, and I was able to get hits because I'm using a 50/200 zero, which is and isn't. I was able to get hits out to reasonable distances with this gun, and overall it functioned great. The recoil pulse is a little bit more noticeable than the 5.56 for obvious reasons, the 7.62 by 39 round, depending on the operating system. And because the 7.62 by 39 round was kind of designed for a piston system, I felt like this gun would be like, oh, okay, I'm familiar with this. The recoil pulse is, like I said, it's not problematic, but it is more noticeable, and you definitely see more jitter and more travel in your reticle when you're shooting this versus shooting a 7.62 by 39 in like an AK platform. So I think the nature of the short stroke system behaves a little bit differently than what you're going to get out of an AKM platform or something comparable. The AK purists are probably already turned off this video, or they never started watching it because yet rifle is fine. I'll tell you this right now, I would rather use this than an AK, and I have used an AK. When I was a security contractor, that was all we had, at least for that particular situation, and I had to use a couple different variants of the AK platform, and I don't hate it, I'm just indifferent to it. But being able to get, and this is something really silly, but being able to have my rifle do that when it runs out of ammo is a huge deal for me. And then there's other modern ergonomic features that you get from the Bren 2 and 7.62 by 39 that you're not going to get for some of the other guns that are out there. I'm not saying this is the best rifle ever chambered in 7.62 by 39. In fact, when you compare it to the Bren 5.56, you'll notice a distinct difference. The Bren 5.56 is a proper gentleman who uses multisyllable words in conversation. This is like his drunk cousin from the trailer park. Doesn't mean he's not a cool guy, you're just not going to bring him to every event that you go to. As of filming this in 2020, late 2020, we're in November right now when this video was actually filmed, ammunition is a problem, and I foresee when you're watching this, ammo might still be a problem when it comes to cost and availability. So getting something in 7.62 by 39, ammunition in 7.62 39 is still a little bit more plentiful, and the prices, relatively speaking, are reasonable based on supply and demand. So if the only issue you're really going to have with this particular firearm is finding magazines for it. It comes with 2, and then basically get, put in your email address to be notified for when back in stock. That's exactly what I had to do to get the amount of magazines I need for the burn down. Kind of cursed myself by including that in my firearms reviews, because now I always have to buy at least 500 rounds worth of magazines for any firearm review, which is can be expensive, but that's okay, because that's what you guys have come to expect, and I'm going to keep doing it. I like this thing, I'm going to keep it. It's definitely advantageous when you add some of the aftermarket accessories. The rail, really, I ran the OEM trigger throughout the review process, and for some reason, I don't know, on the 5.56 I didn't really like it. I felt like it was very vague in its travel. I don't know if it's necessarily different, specifically different internals. I don't believe that it is, but this trigger, I feel like I like it a little bit better. Maybe I just got used to it, and that could be it. But I don't plan on changing the trigger out on this particular one. The only thing I'm really going to do is keep shooting it. I'm Aaron Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.